let's get right into this here, guys. Our talk, myself and Eddie's talk, is the digital workflow with your digital lab. And you know, I'm just move that there. Sorry, just moving stuff around here, guys. Okay, let's get right to it.
Right. Let's
you good, Eddie?
I got my coffee. I'm ready to go.
Good to go. When I speak, I usually speak with Mian, so this is quite an honor for me to speak with Eddie. Dr. Mian Quick and I speak together a lot, and one of the first slides you'll see from us all the time is how do dentists think? And we like to challenge dentists in how they think, because we get kind of set in our ways, and we're not willing to change and evolve. But I want to challenge you. Well, let me tell you how I thought and how I grew and how I evolved in my dentistry. I think we all know that as a dentist, as a digital dentist that I am, I've done everything I can over the past 10, 11 years being a CEREC dentist to eliminate the lab from my workflow. You know, and I think I did a pretty good job. I got rid of the lab. I do almost everything in-house, and I'm very proud of what I do. And the reason I did this was, this is what I thought, that labs cut into our profit. And if we can eliminate the lab, hey, more money in our pockets. So that's a good thing, we always thought. And there's probably a lot of dentists out there that think the same thing. And I think there's a lot of companies that would promote that when they're trying to sell CAD/CAM dentistry. But how should we think? Well, let me challenge how we should think. I've evolved as a digital dentist over the past 10 years. And I've evolved with the technology. The technology has evolved. I started with CEREC BlueCam way back then, and I've evolved with the technology. Materials have evolved. And, you know, when I first got my CEREC machine, you know, my labs came to me and said, Jeff, what's happened? Did we upset you? Why aren't you sending us any business anymore? And I said, well, I got a CEREC machine. And they were like, you know, you could see the wind taken out of their sails. They were saddened. And they said, well, if you ever decide to come back and do lab work, let us know. But those were the labs that were resistant to change. The difference is labs have evolved too. And labs like Eddie and the labs that have evolved have embraced these changes. And I'll tell you, the right lab can improve your workflow, improve your results. And this is one that I really like, is it reduces your stress levels. That's a really nice thing to have. We're under a very stressful time right now, and going back is going to be even more stressful. How do we deal with this? How do we deal with our patients? But on top of that, it makes us more efficient and profitable. So these are all very, very good things. So the evolution, not only of dentistry, us as dentists, our technology, the materials, but also the labs. And that's what we want to talk about. I want to tell you a little bit of a story here, first of all. So a couple of years ago, I was fortunate enough to be invited to go down to the American Academy of Cosmetic Dentistry in San Diego. And it was Denise there that you see behind Dr. Quick on the right side that invited me and myself to go down. And it was amazing. We had such a great experience. I mean, you're seeing some incredible dentistry down there. And, you know, and I don't want Eddie's head to get too big here, but I was introduced to Eddie Corrales, who's at the back on the left there behind me. And I had actually followed Eddie before I even met him. I had followed him on Instagram and on Facebook, and I was a fan of his work. And you know, this guy is a world-renowned ceramist. And across from Eddie is Bobby Williams, who's an amazing ceramist also. So, you know, to meet him, it was quite an experience. So when I met him, of course, we started talking, and he showed me some of the work that he did, and I had already seen it. And I said, yeah, I've seen this case. Eddie, I love what you do. It's incredible. Eddie, yeah. So go ahead.
I remember, sorry, that's my dog outside barking. Yeah, I remember that night very well. As a matter of fact, you can see in this picture, first of all, my Pink Floyd t-shirt. But the other thing is that light that is on your right side, to provide a little more light for the picture, is a DSD trick that we were using in the old days when DSD first appeared. But I also remember that I was the one that suggested the sushi place. And I was very nervous that you and your team would not like it. So it's called Taka Sushi here in San Diego. And it was a pretty cool evening. And yes, I got to see your work. And I really thought you were a ceramist. I was confused in the beginning because I remember meeting you at the pool, and we were just talking, but we were not expressing who we were. And when I saw you at the table, I thought Bobby Williams, you and I were ceramists. And you started showing me those pictures, and that's how it came about that you were a dentist doing your own work, and you opened the door to this wonderful idea of working together with you in Toronto.
Right. So it was pretty great. And when Eddie said to me, he said, "Jeff, I think we should work together doing something." And I said, I was flattered. I was honored, and I thought, yeah, I need to take this opportunity when I can. So fortunately, about a month later, a case came into my office. Now, this is a patient that I'd known for 20 years, and I'd been babying along, and believe it or not, he was wearing a night guard, but he just was grinding on his teeth. You can see the wear, and it doesn't look so bad, but you can see a couple gold crowns in the back there, because I wasn't going to do anything other than gold crowns, because he would just destroy everything. So when you look at it from an occlusal standpoint, you really can appreciate the occlusal wear. And you can see the gold crowns in the posterior there. Now you see another gold crown here. And I want to tell you, the most stressful time for me, if I'm going to tackle a big case, is design and customization. So here's what we talk about. Now, there are scanners and there are scanners. And, I'm going to say there are a lot of good scanners out there. But it does all start with a scan. For me, what works in my hands is the CEREC scanner. I use my Prime Scan, and I love it. So to me, it starts with that. And I'm a little biased. I agree with what Mark said before, and completely. This is not about a sales pitch for one scanner or another. They are all amazing. With the progression and the evolution, everybody stepped up to the game, and they have great scanners. Mine is the Prime Scan. It works for me. Here's a scan of the upper teeth that I did on my patient, and you can really appreciate the wear that you're seeing on those teeth. But also with the Prime Scan, look at how it picks up that gold. No problem at all. Now, that scan, under 30 seconds. There's the upper scan, there's the lower scan, another gold crown there, endo through that. But again, you can take a scan, an entire dentition, in under 2 minutes. So essentially now what I'm doing with every patient, every new patient, we take an upper, a lower, and a bite. And this is a way better way to communicate with your patient. In the past, I would take intraoral photos. But I find that actually a scan is a much better way to communicate. They can appreciate where the teeth are, and they understand the relation of it. If you just take one photo, they're like, is that the top? Is that the bottom? They don't quite understand that. Whereas a scan is much more advantageous when you're trying to teach them and show them what's going on. Now, what do I do with that? What do I send to my digital lab? Here's what we send. We send our scans of the upper, the lower, the bite, which is easy. It takes under 2 minutes. I'm going to send photos, and Eddie's going to get into what kind of photos he wants to see. And it's important that you know what your lab wants to see. And thirdly, you want to know, your lab wants to know what your goals are for this case. And not only your goals, but the goals of the patient, because they may not be the same. They may not be the exact same. So it's important that you and the lab understands what your goals are. So what does Eddie do now? So I'm going to have Eddie step in and take over a little bit. And he's going to talk about what he's going to do with that information now.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Well, thank you, everybody, for being here. It's a cool presentation that we're doing together. I don't have control of this, so Jeff is going to have to pass the slides for me. A little bit about emotional dentistry, which is what this is based on. I don't want you to read this whole thing, but it really is something that takes in consideration the end result with the patient's expectations. So that's what we've been doing now as laboratories and also as dentists, to consider what the patient is looking for and try to match it with the treatment plan, so they feel that the value of this treatment plan is worth it. Because as many times people think that this dentistry is really expensive and they don't want to do it because of one reason or another. They have various excuses for that. But the emotional dentistry, we are able through either 2D, which is a photography, a great photo, and Photoshop, or different apps like the DSD app, other apps are in the market, we can actually show patients the treatment plan and what it's going to look like, but also doing mock-ups so they can see the value and fall in love with value of the dentistry we're about to perform. Go ahead and click for me, Jeff. So one of the things that I want my audience and work with here around the country and parts of the world is to have this slide here printed and have it in their operatory or maybe even in their waiting room, because visigism, even though it's a very strange word, it stands for this part, and you can find this as a PDF file on Google it. And this is just a one sentence that I just want to get, or paragraph that I got just to simplify it. But patients love this because, again, patients not only don't see the value of it, they also have unreal expectations sometimes. They want it white, they want it natural. They're also very scared about looking fake. I don't want the result to be like my neighbor across the street. You know, my mother-in-law just got teeth and they just look horrible. I don't want that. So with visigism, if by now you read a little about this, we include the patient's, let's say, ethnicity, color of their hair, the shape of their head, even their height. We take this in consideration so we can present them with the right design for the dentition, either denture or veneers, crowns, whatever we're gonna do with the smile area. So this is a really cool paragraph that I got, because it really start to believe in you and they start loosening up when you're gonna present the treatment plan. Go ahead, Jeff, please. So all these will be emotional decisions. So you have to find the emotional connection. Like the case that we work with Jeff, you know, it's a maybe $40,000 plus dollar case, and you don't know if the patient's gonna wanna do it because he wants to see it. Obviously, we opened video, so he got to see the final result ahead of time, so the investment was fine. But with emotional decisions, go ahead and click again so we can see that. My examples are, when you go to a store, you get to try on your clothes, right? You get to try it on, and you know the person that's working at the store is telling you, "Wow, you look amazing." You may not look amazing, but it's telling you that you look amazing because that's what they want you to feel, that you know you look good, and then you feel good, and you go ahead and pay. The Apple Store is probably my worst enemy, because when I go to the Apple Store, I can play with every toy that I have there, and it's pretty cool because you know you go, you play, you have the experience, you end up dropping $2,000 when you just went to get a little stylus, right? So that's an emotional decision. And needless to say, the car, you know, you always test drive a car, otherwise you're not going to drive it, you're not going to take it, you're not going to buy it. So that's why we have to connect dentistry the same way. So that way they see what they're going to look like, and they can have that connection, a mental connection with the treatment plan. They get the value out of the way, the financial value is going to look like that picture or that video that you will make from the mock-up. Go ahead, please, Jeff. So these are the pictures that we want as laboratories, and not just DSD laboratories. This is the pictures that we need to take nowadays. Now, this was taken with an SLR camera. Very easy to do with an iPhone. I do teach in my course how to use your iPhone to take these photos, and really good quality photos. We want to take the retracted photo first, as you see on your far left. You want to take the small photo, because when we do the treatment plan, we want to see if we can get these two pictures, full face pictures, full smile pictures, calibrated together. So if you have the patient hold the retractors, when you take this one picture, you will not move your position with your camera or with your phone. You will not move, and you will direct your patient to go ahead and remove the retractors without moving their head. That way there's no movement, and you can actually have almost the same picture, the same position. So you can calibrate the photos, which makes it for a very nice treatment plan. If you did it the other way, what would happen is that if they smile and you tell them to put their retractors on, then they will have to move their head and come back up. And then it'll be really difficult to calibrate it. So that's just a little trick on taking those two photos and why they're like that. And also the one at the bottom, the up close photo, is what tells us everything that's going on in the mouth. So these are really good photos. The one on the far right is called the 12 o'clock photo. It's important for when you do ortho, when you want to bring teeth out so you can see the wet and dry line of the lip, so you can see and communicate with the orthodontist or with anybody else that is working on this case to bring things out or in from that line. So it's very, very nice photos. The ones in the middle, obviously, are the profile photos that allow us to see pretty much where we're going with our angulation of our incisal layers. Go ahead, please. So here's real quick, Steve. There's apps that do this. I'm still a little old school sometimes, and I do it with my Keynote. But with this photo, just go ahead and click. Click really quick if you want, Jeff, on this next ones. We do the mapping. We tell the patient or whoever's going to be working with us, now a dentist, we do the golden proportions, where they are and where they need to be. This is our outline of the teeth, where we would like to be. We then compare both where we are and where we want to be. The white was where we are, and the blue is where we want to be. Then we create a new golden proportion. Then usually that's just really up to us where we want the golden proportion. It's not a rule. It's a concept that we want to use to organize our thoughts. Then we just provide it where it already has teeth done there through an app or Photoshop, and we can present the patient with a before and after right away. So that will be the next picture. And here's a before and after. Veneers were not done. This is either done through an app, or for me, again, being old school, I like to do this many times with my Photoshop. So you can actually have this treatment plan, show it to the patient. And obviously, by now, a lot of people are doing this concept, but I know there's many out there that would rather grab a picture and just draw on it. Well, I'm sorry, but with all the technology going out right now, 2020, we want to be organized and we want to be digitalized. So patients really appreciate it. Patients do their homework through social media and they know who's up there with the technology. So showing this organization in your treatment plan also gives them a nice feeling of ease and comfortableness with you and your team. Go ahead, please. All this is making sense. You can go forward. There you go. This is a simply done Photoshop case that I've done. So this is what I do pretty much every day. This is a tennis player from Germany that sent me the photo and got this Photoshop done. I sent it back to Germany, and I met her in Florida, one of my doctors, to do it. You notice this has this disclaimer. If you're gonna have this, you're gonna want to have some kind of disclaimer that says the final restorations may vary from the digital mockup. So from there, we get the 3D. This is my in-lab software. We do our diagnostic wax-ups and how we can actually grab STL files from different patients and put them in our software and get a different sign from different patients and adapt them to our software so we can give any smile the patients want or something that we got it called a smile donator. So I can actually scan Jeff's beautiful dentition and put it on a patient that is here in San Diego as an STL, and I can adapt to their arch. Go ahead, please. Here's a little sample of how the diagnostic wax-up will work, a digital wax-up. So this is just a short video that Jeff is playing for you. We go ahead and get our designs. We get everything adapted through your impression, or doctor's impression is digitally sent to us. We do our placement. We get our proposals, and then obviously we have to design just a little after that's done. We virtually seat these designs onto the model, and then the software knows to then give us an entire yellow model, like you see now in the back. It'll give us a whole yellow model with these restorations in place. So that's how a digital diagnostic wax is made.
Go ahead here, Eddie.
Go ahead. Is everything okay?
All good. This is one of my favorite slides. I love this one.
Here's the workflow, right? So wax up works with CEREC scan. We open it on our in-lab, which is the second picture from the top. We get our initial proposals on in-lab. Then we go ahead and design it. That's the fourth picture now. We go and design it. Then we put it on our parallel or our sister software, which is part of the in-lab software. And we go ahead and have a model. You see now the yellow model, the model preview. And then we just go ahead and print the model just like we did here with Jeff on the case. So this is a really cool photo just to show the whole process. Right. Go ahead. So here, just mock-ups. And, you know, we're not going to listen to the whole video, but for me, emotional mock-ups are key. I do a lot of these here in Diego, but what we do usually is just do the mock-up, the wax up, send you the stents, and then you go ahead and do the show. Well, the show is when you have the patient come in to do the mock-up, you go ahead and instead of having a mirror in your operatory, you just get that mirror out of the way. And you're gonna grab your phone and or an iPad. Maybe an iPad will be better, or a large iPad if you don't have connection HDMI to a bigger TV. But you go ahead and grab your phone or iPad and make a video of the before, just sitting in the chair, just 10, 20-second video, have them say the letter E, so while they speak, they see teeth, their befores. And then you go ahead and do the mock-up that will take probably about 10 minutes at most. Do your mock-up that is just in and out, and you go ahead and shoot the same video. And then through apps, you can put those videos together and show the patient without sound what the before and after is going to look like. This is really
what I love here, Eddie, too, is that, you know, this is partly the evolution too, right? We know that there's power in photos, but now, you know, Eddie's evolving, we're evolving, and there's much more power in the videos. Look at the difference when you see the before and after, the difference and how much information you get from that video. I think that's great.
And you know, now we're using this term so much, and it's something that, you know, I'm doing this presentation for about 4 years around the country and parts of the world. Social distance. And we have to tell patients what social distance is, so they know they have to be at least 3 feet away so they can see their smile and not grab the mirror and look at it so close. With the video, you eliminate that. With the video, they see themselves the way that other people are going to see them on the street at 3 feet away. So anyways, here's Sirona Connect. This is something that is huge for CEREC owners. Here's a case that was sent out to me from the East Coast. We go ahead and we get the CEREC scan. You see, again, the in-lab scan. And then we get the model, and the model gets done. And at the same time, we start milling our restorations. Go ahead, Jeff, you can go forward.
You bet. Yeah.
Here it is. You got the model on the top left, top right, obviously the model with the separate dies. We can actually have set on all these models. We have our design on the bottom left, and then we have our model printed. Just for the sake of the picture, I did the dies different colors. I think it looks pretty cool. A little more work. You have to wait more. I have 2 printers to do this and work faster. But it's actually pretty cool because you can remove those dies. Go ahead, you can go forward because this is a really good picture coming up. Now, the one thing that I like to control, because I'm an occlusion freak, is that even though the model, everything is accurately done, I like to put these large cases on a COIS, Danar, or a SAM, or a Stratos articulator, especially if the doctor has the same version of this articulator. And I like to take that extra step. Yes, it's not digital. It's just, again, I repeat, I'm old school, and I like to make sure that I double check and triple check, especially when the case is going to the East Coast, that the occlusion is accurate. So I like to put it in there. I use stone, that's just old school. I know that we are getting really close to having articulation that is accurate on our softwares. So this is how the case gets finished and sent to the office. And here are trickier cases. If you have an implant case that you can't handle in your office, we have the ability to get parts for that implant. So we can get not only the tie base, but we can also get the implant that will fit into this model, just like it does in the mouth. So we can do the model, we can do the replica, we can do the abutment and the crown all in one move. So it's really cool how fast we can get this case done. Good. Here's the case now finished and ready to be sent out to the office. Now going back to technology, and this is something that for all you guys, especially young dentists, I just used this app or this feature, FaceTime, on my iPhone, talking to somebody in Florida. They sent me a case for me to design, and the preparation had an undercut. And instead, I was about to jump into the screen here to work with you guys. So I just showed her my screen through FaceTime so she can see the problem that I was having with the preparation. So we moved the margin up and things worked out better. So here I use this FaceTime is to meet the patient, to talk to the patient, and to feel the patient out. One of the things that I always worry when I do these smiles, because again, you guys prep, send it to the laboratory, and here we go. We got to do our magic. So knowing the patient's expectations and also mental stability is very important for us, because when they say super white, we need to be careful how white we want to go, correct? Or how natural we make that look. This girl was in Chicago with Dr. Rich Rosenblatt, and I was working in Florida. So they called me and they wanted to do 4-unit case. And from there, you can see on my phone, I can see how picky she was. I can see how she was very concerned about a certain tooth. She really didn't like the veneers that she had already. It was done in Brazil somewhere, and she was not happy. So I could tell by her mannerisms where she was going. It's really important to see how this patient, or how you're going to tell this patient the story and how you can deliver the case. So this way, you can get the patient to feel at ease. They met smile designer, and the case is going to be okay because I understood what she wanted. I agreed with her, and we ended up doing the case via Cerona Connect. Go ahead, Jeff, if you want to go forward. And here's the case. It was sent out that day. This is the old software. CEREC still blue in the background, but in-lab now is gray. So this case was done a few years back. We use one block of HTB40, very translucent, and we did the case. Go ahead and go forward. And here's on the model. We try it on a solid model and a pin model. I do the gingival mask sometimes in my cases. That doesn't come with the model. Go ahead. And here's her before and after. And she was very pleased. So was Dr. Rosenblatt. You can tell that 1-1. Is it 11, Jeff? Or is it number 8?
1-1.
It's 11.
Yeah, 1-1.
1-1 has the obviously some kind of post in there. So we had to make sure that we block that out. And that's one of our biggest concerns, how we can block that out. And I think we did a pretty good job blocking it out.
Yeah.
Now, again, using the phone. This is a doctor locally that was prepping a case. She was following my prep guide, and she sent me a photo of her preps as she was going, and I opened it. I wasn't home. I wasn't at the lab. I was actually on an airport about to fly to do a case, and I get this photo. I put it on an app, and I put that arrow just to let her know that she needed to prep a little bit more on that distal of what now, yeah, that will be 11 as well, to move that angle, because my mock-up or my temporary stent, which is the same, was not going to fit, and my veneer was not going to look the same way. So it's a really good way to communicate back and forth by using your phone or a device. Here again, very short. I just make short videos for my doctors. They send me this case. It's just a short video that I can talk to the doctor and say, listen, I don't know where this is going. I don't know what your expectations are, but the implant was placed wrong. So now we're going to have an issue on where we're going to have our connector on this bridge, because it was going to be a 4U bridge. So I show my concerns right away, and it allows for really good communication, because that's where everything succeeds with dentistry, especially digital dentistry, is communication. So this way, by using just my phone, I can just go back and forth with my doctors and have a better treatment plan or a better result in our cases. Go ahead.
See that, Eddie? You with me?
It's going, it's going. So this, we don't have to read again. This is repeating what I was just talking about. I'm also a COIS member, a SPEAR member. I've done all my LBIs in the old days. I've done my PAC Live. So I try to stay up with all the new stuff coming up. So, you know, we want to know what the patient wants. So this is the time. We have all the tools out there to just give the patients what they want, and we can show them. They can see everything. So the patients see what before the how. So everything that I just said is just summed up here. So my digital menu for my dentist is this one. You can ask for a digital photo mock-up, which you send me a very nice photo. I put it on Photoshop, send it back to you before and after, so you can send your patient. You can also send me a scan with the photo, so we can get a diagnostic wax up with the mock-up, and you can get the photo as well. And then you can full DSD treatment plan, which is the entire, sorry, that. There?
Yeah, we're still here, Eddie. You just
Yeah, I'm there. Sorry. Yeah, there you go. Sorry about that. Put me back on. That was my last slide. Am I in?
Yep, you're good.
There you go. All right. So the full-on DSD treatment plan, which is everything, the mapping of the teeth, so something that you can actually communicate with the patient. You'll get the wax up. Oh my gosh, sorry. I should have gotten that out. And then we can also come to your office, do the full experience like we did with Jeff. We can produce your case digitally with CEREC Connect or PBS and send it back to you. And this is the one that Jeff really likes, and it's something that we're using a lot now, is design and send the case back ready for you to mill. So you will send the CEREC file. We will open in our laboratory. We design it to perfection. You will receive it as a DXD file, open it on your CEREC, and you'll be able to mill it and just put it on your model. And I know that Jeff is gonna add some more to how you will how you handle this case after you receive it.
Thanks, Eddie. That was fantastic. So let me step back in here, and I'm going to get back to that case that we did with Eddie, so that you can appreciate what we did and how my workflow worked for me. So what I did, once I sent that scan to Eddie, he did his magic, and I got back a file, an STL file, and I was able to use my 3D printer. So let's talk about that. Now, of course, Mark Chan is the guy to teach me about 3D printing. I have a Formlabs 2 printer. I was one of the first, you know, I was an early adopter of it. And as Mark said, do your research before, so you understand which printer makes the most sense for you. For me, the Formlabs 2, well, I got it early on. I know there are better ones out. Formlabs has a Formlabs 3, that's better. Even the materials with Formlabs have improved. Sprint Ray is an amazing 3D printer also, but this is what I used. I was able to print off the mock-ups that Eddie did for me. Now, this was very powerful in terms of presenting to my patient. I was able to show him what his teeth could look like. But even that, just looking at these models, it's hard to even, because they're so perfect, it's hard to even appreciate that these could be your teeth. So I take it one step further, and I make these vacuform Essex type retainers, and they're made off of the mock-ups, and then I can put those directly in the patient's mouth. Now he's able to see what his teeth should look like, and in terms of seeing the increased length, in terms of the change of occlusion. So that's a very powerful thing, you know, and we're able to look at it. We can also use those ESICs as reduction guides, which is pretty cool too. So there you have it. We're seeing what we could do. Now, you'll note those gold crowns in the back. I'm going to talk about those in another second here too. Remember what we talked about here? We saw those gold crowns. I removed those gold crowns. The patient said he loved it after he saw those Essex type retainers. He said, yeah, let's go, let's do this. So same day I said, okay, let's remove these gold crowns. I removed the uppers. I removed that one on the bottom. Now you're probably saying, why are you doing this, Jeff? Why are you removing the gold crowns? Well, there's a couple of reasons. Number one, they have to come off anyway because I'm increasing the vertical dimension. Number two, I want to deal with what is under those crowns right away. Whether there's decay, whether there's, you know, old restorations, old amalgams, whatever it may be, that I don't feel comfortable building this big case on. You know, as we know, it's only going to be as strong as the weakest link. So make sure that you're building on good solid tooth structure. But more importantly, when I'm making my temporaries, by removing those crowns, I'm now going to get more retention. So what did I do? I temporized that patient with his new vertical dimension. I used Luxatemp, use whatever material you want. The amazing thing was this was essentially a completely additive process. I did not have to prep any of the other teeth other than pop off those crowns. And I just did an additive procedure. And I left him in that for 6 weeks. And I wanted him to get used to that new vertical dimension. At the time, I adjusted his bite right away, and we had a very balanced bite. And I know Pio was going to talk about the bite, and what he was showing me yesterday when we were chatting, what he does in terms of bite analysis is incredible. And again, I can learn so much from Pio. So definitely tune into that talk and learn about how to adjust and equilibrate a bite. Now, once I was happy with the bite, you know, it could be 2 weeks, it could be 4 weeks, it could be down the road. I was happy at that point, and the patient said, this feels great. And we looked at the occlusal points and the marks, and it was fantastic. So I rescanned after I had adjusted, and we had that balanced bite. And then I send that STL file back to Eddie. And I said, Eddie, this is the bite we're going with. So this is, again, the transfer of information that is so important. Now Eddie can see the bite that we're going to work with, and he can do his adjustments to his wax up. So when Eddie comes up to see me, he's ready to go. And his design is really going to be quite easy at that stage. So what happens now? Eddie, we figure a time, and Eddie flies in from San Diego. Eddie flies up from San Diego, and it was great. Now, what I will recommend, and I never claim to be perfect by any means, but be more observant than me. See the gingival margin there? I should have seen that before. And if you listen to Tina Kokosis, who's our periodontist, do your perio first. Not like me. Don't. Eddie's with me. I'm there. I'm like, all right, we need to deal with this. So, but the fortunate thing is this patient had a lot of attached gingiva there. So I need to respect the gingiva. I did some perio probing to make sure that I was still respecting that. And what did I do? You know, you can do electrosurgery, you can do laser. I used electrosurgery in this case, but use whatever works for you. And again, respect that gingiva. That's my shout out to Tina. I hope you see that I'm not being a complete bum here. And create the ideal gingiva. Yes, it's a little inflamed right there, but look at that. Now we're talking about the line that Mark was showing. This is what you want to create, so you're getting those perfect aesthetic end result. Now, we talked about scanners. Which scanner do you use? Which scanner is the best? Well, I have an opinion. I'm going to show you scanning 14 crowns all at once, 14 crown preps in the maxilla all at once. And you can watch how much time this takes. Now, again, in dental school, and you're an early dentist, a young dentist, or even older dentists who are experienced, you know, you take an impression of multiple teeth that you've prepped. It is a stressful time. You are hoping that you are going to get all those margins, and there's going to be no pulls, and there's going to be no blood, and there is going to be nothing that ruins your impression. And if you can take an impression and not be stressed doing 14 teeth at the same time, well, then you are way better than me, and I have a lot to learn from you. But I think there's really nobody that would not be stressed about that. But I'm telling you, when I do this scan with my prime scan, there is zero stress. And not only do, you know, when you have a PVS you take it out and you look at that, you're not really assessing your preparations. Here, I can get the perfect image, and now I can actually assess my preparations and see if my preps were as good as I want them to be. If they're not, I can go back and adjust those right away. If you get that perfect impression with polyvinyl and you think I need to change something, well, now you have to go back and change it and re-impress. Well, there's that stress all over again. So this just makes our workflow and our life so much easier. And again, it's not a sales pitch on one scanner or the other. They're all very good. PrimeScan works in my hands. Now we have to select the material. And I've been fortunate enough over my 11 years working with CAD/CAM dentistry that I've used all the materials. The first material I started with was a Vita Mark II, and that was the only one out there. And it is a fantastic material still, but materials have evolved. Like I said, we've all evolved materials technology. So I've been fortunate enough to try all the materials along the way. I use Emax, I use zirconias. I love them. One of the ones that is my favorite right now is Vita Suprinity. Vita Suprinity PC, and the PC stands for partially crystallized. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more and why it's such a great material. So let's get into that. Now, before I get to that, let me talk about this. So now we picked our material. Now we have to mill these beautiful crowns that Eddie's just created. And I had both MCXLs there. So we were milling 2 at a time, which was great. It sped up our work process. I hadn't got my prime mill yet, so we had to do this. But you know what? Involve your patient. This is an opportunity. This is a patient who's, well, he's probably about maybe a few years older than me, not that much older, but you know, he loves technology. And there he is, taking pictures, taking video, and sharing this on his Facebook and his Instagram. And I'm telling you, patients love this stuff. They're like, these are my teeth being made. So you share it, and they share it with everyone. And I'm telling you, what you get, free marketing. It's the cheapest marketing you'll ever get. So let's go back to our material. Remember, we have Suprinity material. So I'm trying in the 14 crowns in the maxilla. And you can see it. There's some red marks on there. Eddie's making some marks already. The great thing about this is it is Vita Suprinity partially crystallized. And in the partially crystallized form, you can actually, it is translucent. You can see through the material. So I can actually look and see, is it seating the way I want it to? Am I happy with how things are looking? And you can see the increase in length that we're getting from putting those crowns on. It's not, there's no guesswork here. So it's a fantastic material. It mills beautifully. The marginal stability is amazing. This is in the partially crystallized form. But then when it goes into the oven, becomes crystallized, it is so strong, and those margins are beautiful. And you know, the gold standard is Emax. And Emax, I love Emax. I use it all the time. But Vita Suprinity is actually stronger than Emax. It's hard to believe that. It's not a ton stronger, so it's not a huge difference, but it is a great material. It's actually stronger. So there we have 14 crowns, and they seated perfectly. You know, the contacts, everything was great. And so this is credit. You got to give credit where credit is due. This is thanks to Eddie. This took the stress out of my life. Eddie designed these, and it was so easy for me. Now, do we actually go ahead and do all 14 the way I showed it there? Yeah, I scanned 14, dropped 14 in, perfect. Well, it didn't go that way directly. I actually did the posterior crowns first. And there's a reason why I did that. Although we had already set our vertical dimension, I wanted to make sure that we maintained that vertical dimension throughout this whole process. So we did the posterior crowns first, had them milled and had them seated in there, and then did the anterior crowns. And that way we could have the posterior crowns dictating and setting that vertical dimension. So there is a bit of a workflow. I'm showing it in a little bit faster form here, and then they were all partially crystallized and tried them in. But it wasn't like I prepped all 14. And that actually, believe it or not, sped up our process, because after I did those first 4 crowns, then Eddie could start milling them and designing them and doing what he needed to while I was doing the other 10 there. So it made sense. It made sense in our workflow. And if you know, and you've listened to Dr. Quick, me and I talk, we are all about efficiency. And this is what we do. And that's how it made it more efficient. So Eddie, why don't you step in and talk about what you did here now?
So after the case is milled and tried in the mouth, we go ahead and you can see the stone model here with some of the orange materials, light body material. It's just a trick that I use in the laboratory to stick my crowns in there. If you guys are in CEREC already, you know when you do veneers and you try to do something, they keep falling. So I use light material, which is the orange. the blue is a silicone, it's called Siltec by Ivoclar, and that's how I record my incisal edge. So I go ahead and I do all my striations, I do all my anatomy, my contours, and then I do this little guide because I am going to cut back laterals and centrals. So I record the incisal edges so I can have a guide, and I do my, go ahead, go forward, please.
Yep, you bet.
Jeff. And then yep, we do the cut back. Here it goes. Cut back. I use a sharp edge rubber wheel, and then also a little diamond, but not putting too much pressure onto the glass. Do my cut back. And you can see how I'm just cutting back the 4, creating some mamelons. Go ahead. And here is how I verify everything is minimally cut back. We don't want too much gray anymore. You know, everybody wants white teeth nowadays. Even though this was a nice, I think it was a 1 or 1 and 1. So it was a really nice result, but we didn't want to get too much gray in there. We just want to have a nice, subtle transition of translucency versus the incisal going towards the cervical third. So we go ahead and we start working.
Sorry, I'm going to step in here for a second. So, you know, I talk about efficiency, and, you know, when I talk about efficiency, the workflow is amazing. I could have, in theory, done my prep, stepped away, gone to see other patients, and been very efficient and done other dentistry. Now, I want to take every opportunity I can to learn. So when I have Eddie in my office here, I'm going to watch him. I want to learn. You know, when I have a chance to learn from a master, I'm going for it. And so I didn't actually book other patients. I wanted to watch Eddie. And we kept him hydrated. Didn't we? We had you with some coffee going there and make sure Eddie was staying awake, right?
I had two cups of coffee and a lot of water for sure. Here you can see how I stain and glaze the 2 canines, but the centrals and laterals only had a little bit of color. You can't see now in the trick, but you'll see in the next picture how the stain and glaze job on those 2 canines when they come out of the oven. You can see, especially on number, was it 23?
Yep, correct.
I'm doing better with that. You can see the translucent effect right at the incisal edge that's just stained. And then you see the cut back to verify what's going on. Go ahead, please.
So I want to step in. So notice the stone model here, guys. And I talk about a digital workflow. This is not digital. Stand by. I'm going to continue on with that. But the reason we did a stone model was Eddie said I wanted to try these crowns in, and it made sense. I need to try them in to do the adjustments, to do everything. So the fastest way, he said, you know, let's get a polyvinyl. And I said, well, what do you mean? I don't have polyvinyl. I haven't done a polyvinyl impression in years. So, but we did find some in the office, and I actually remembered how to do it. And we got a decent model that worked for Eddie. So, you know, I'm pretty proud of myself that I was able to get a decent impression. You know, it probably wasn't perfect, but it was sufficient for Eddie trying these in. Eddie?
And here we go. These are the stains that we use by Vita. That's the effect that I use is a Vita VM11 that we use with Suprinity. And I don't use that many colors. We use 3 different kinds of translucent effects on the top right. And we just use a little color on the bottom left for a little bit of chroma. And then some of that brown or mahogany, or however we want to call it, just a little bit of that on our posteriors that you will see later. Go ahead, Jeff.
So here we have the translucent porcelain that you can see, and you know, it gives a great result. And you know, I like this one, Eddie, because you can really see it. But if you take it to a black and white photo, you can really see the transition of the shades and the incisal translucency. And I think that, you know, looking at it from these different perspectives really gives you an appreciation for what the master did with these teeth. So what do? We try these in, and we use my jig. Of course, they're falling a little bit. And then, you know, they're not bonded, but we're trying in all 14. I like to test all the way along. We try them in the pre-crystallized. We try them in the crystallized. We tried them in after Eddie had done his incisal translucency and the staining and glazing. And then I have my staff prepare the teeth. You know, they're etching, they're silaning, and you do it as per the material and as per the bond instructions, right? I chose to do a selective etch on the anteriors. My patient had some sensitivity, so I didn't do a total etch technique. I did a selective etch technique. And I want to show you the material I used here was Panavia V5. I like Panavia V5 in the anterior. And this video just shows the how fast it is. I'm doing a very quick tack cure. We're talking 1 second on each tooth just to do a tack cure. And that way, when I'm done with that tack cure, I can get back and remove the excess. So you can see that took 12 seconds, and now they are tacked in place, and I can get in there and remove the excess bond very easily. Then I'll go back and do the final bond. Now, again, I've skipped a couple steps. Of course, I bonded the teeth, followed the normal protocol of using Panavia V5, but I just wanted to show you that tack here. Follow the instructions as per the cement or the bond that you're using. Okay. 14 crowns done. You know what? We got those 14 crowns in the maxilla done. Eddie and I looked at each other and we're like, this is going too easy. This is great. So we said, let's keep going. Now this really shows of what I was talking about, what we did in the maxilla. We said, all right, let's do the posterior crowns on the mandible. So I prepped the 4 crowns in the mandible. And so by the end of day 1, my goal was to get 14 crowns done. We completed 18 crowns. So guess what? It was time to celebrate. We're feeling pretty good about ourselves. So this is how I like to celebrate, a little vino. Eddie and I talked last night and had a virtual meeting, but we had a glass of wine in our hands. It was good. Talking about old times. It was good. It was good. And, I brought Eddie over to my place. This is my backyard. This is my isolation. It's not so bad, can't complain too much about that. And we celebrated dinner and drinks with my associates. There's Dr. Tahiri and Dr. James there. And, my wife made us an amazing meal from, we got the chicken from Costco. Eddie's now a big fan. And we had a great time. So here we are, day 2. What do I have left? I have 10 crowns to go. But guess what? Eddie's leaving today. He has a flight to catch. So we had to be on time. We couldn't be screwing around too much. We had to get it done. So what did I do? Well, I did 4 crowns. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I did 6 veneers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Why did I do that? Well, I like to be conservative. I didn't want to do too much tooth reduction on those anteriors, and so I decided to do conservative dentistry. And I'm going to fast forward here. An even easier scan. Look at that. 10 teeth to scan. I showed you how fast it was scanning 14 teeth on the top. Imagine how easily I scanned on the bottom doing 10. And again, I like my preps. I like to polish my preps. I take great pride in those. And, it turned out well. Happy time. We get to the end, bond 10 in. Look at that. Looks pretty decent. I'm pretty pleased with that. It turned out beautifully. So from start to finish in a day and a half, let's say we finished I think about 2 o'clock on day 2, Eddie. Things look great. So I have a happy patient. Look at that smile. He loves it. He's thrilled and I'm thrilled. So truly, this is a win-win-win situation. Eddie wins, I win, and my patient wins. And financially, it makes sense. In another lecture, we talk about the money, but and look at that. Even my prime scan smiling. My prime scan has a big smile on its face there. So everybody's happy. Now, remember how I talked about how I like to practice conservative dentistry? Well, guess what? Came back to bite me in the butt a little bit. Why is that? Well, remember those nice preps that we talked about? I had 2 veneers that debonded a few times. Now, why did they debond? Was it my material? No, I've done a ton of suprinity, and I have no problem. I love suprinity. Was it my bond? Absolutely not. Panavia was V5 is an amazing material. Was it Eddie? Did Eddie do something wrong with the design? No, absolutely not. You know what? It was my fault. I take full responsibility for this. It was my fault trying to be too conservative. I didn't appreciate how much the forces were in normal function on those anterior teeth. And I could have changed that. And maybe Pio will talk about that. But for me, this is, I take this on myself. I should have, and my patient wears a night guard too, but I should have converted them to crowns. So what did they do? I wanted to make life easy for my patient. Fortunately, I had taken a final scan of my previous end result. There it was. Why did I do that? Well, it's so easy. I wanted to show Eddie our final result. I wanted to have a record of it. And I used my 3D printer again. So I printed my final result. And then I did the exact same thing. I created a I created a template that I could remove those veneers and convert them to crowns. So I wanted it to be very easy on my patient. I brought him in, took off those veneers and wrapped over to the lingual. You can see here, again, still trying to be conservative. I keep my lingual preps more as high up on the cingulum as possible to maintain as much strength on those teeth. Now, look at this. This is not a stone model. I am now staying true to my vision. The limiting factor was our speed before, but now I took that out of the equation, and materials are better now with Formlabs 2 and Formlabs 3 where you can print it faster. But I said to my patient, go home and I'll see you tomorrow. So I sent him home. I 3D printed my model. There it is, 3D printed model of my scan preps, and there's some separator on there too that you see there. You can also, now I milled my crowns and I tried in my milled crowns, and then I did some customization. I didn't do cutbacks, I just do customization. I never do cutbacks. That is something that a lab does. Everything that I do in-house is monolithic. I do it all with stain and glaze, okay? And then I tried them in, and I adjusted those crowns in terms of the contacts. And I was able to do that as if I was in my patient's mouth because I had my 3D printed model. And I learned from Eddie, there's a great advantage of having that model and being able to try multiple crowns on there. So once I had them all adjusted, perfect contacts, perfect margins, ready for bonding, I bring my patient back the next day, pop off those temporaries very easily. I'm working in the anterior, and easy bonding. So there I have immediate, easy bonding of those 6 anteriors. Now, I'm no Eddie, but hey, not bad, right? And that took no time. It was very easy on my patient. Did I charge my patient anything? No, absolutely not. You take responsibility for what you do, and you do the right thing. So yeah, it cuts into a little bit, but you have to do the right thing. Believe me, I still made good money here, and I'm very pleased at what we did. So let's summarize a little bit. So the next evolution of collaborative dentistry with your digital lab is remote collaboration. You don't necessarily have to have Eddie come and see you. And again, why this is so important is this is ideal for COVID times, right? And this is probably the new normal, you know, in terms of we are trying to limit our interactions. So let's just go over some of the advantages. So number one, I can use any digital lab. My preference, of course, is Eddie. I love the work that Eddie does. I'm a fan. But you can use any digital lab in the world. You know, you meet a ceramist in Dubai that you love, and you can work with him as long as he's digital and understands it. The lab involvement. This is one of the things why I like to work with Eddie so much, is because he's involved in terms of a case presentation, in terms of that emotional connection, so that when you're presenting to your patient, they understand that this is not just going to anybody. This is somebody who wants to interact with you and understands what your needs and your involvement is and your desire. You can get that digital wax up. So again, for case presentation, it's amazing. And if you do that digital wax up, it's much easier than when Eddie gets to the design. This is great. There is no physical exchange of anything. We are not sending impressions to our lab that have saliva and that have blood and that have potentially COVID or some other thing on it. This is important. Same-day dentistry is so important. This is something that I pride myself on. Same-day dentistry. Same-day dentistry using your lab are not mutually exclusive things. You can do these things and still use your lab. And you can get just incredible results and, again, much less stress. I'm telling you, when I did this case with Eddie, 28 crowns, and I've done big cases. I've done cases where I'll do 14 crowns in a day. That is a stressful day. I get home that day, I'm exhausted. Doing this case with Eddie, this was just an incredible experience. I had such a good time. I got to have that personal interaction with a guy that does amazing stuff. And then we got a nice dinner and spend some time together. It is great. But you know, if we want to follow this next evolution, which I see and I know I will work on and do cases, and I'm already working with Eddie on these cases where instead of doing 28, I'm doing maybe 10. You know, what I'll do is I'll get those scans, the photos, and I'll send them to Eddie, and we'll have our consult, you know, with the patient. But when I'm ready to actually do the work, I schedule my appointment so Eddie, or whatever lab you choose to use, whatever digital lab I should say, is ready to receive your information. and they can receive it. They know you're going to be sending them a case at such and such a time, and they can give you immediate feedback. Once they have given you that feedback and they say, yep, I like your preps, I like your design, then you go ahead. If you have a 3D printer, you don't have to do this, but I think it makes sense. The cost of a 3D printer is minimal. To have that 3D printer, then I'm going to go ahead and 3D print my preparation model. Now I'm going to receive my files that Eddie has created of these perfect teeth to mill, and I'm going to mill those teeth in-house. Well, that's easy. I've done that for over 10 years. That's easy. I take the file, I put it into my CEREC, and I mill it. Get those out, and I try them in on my 3D model, printed model, which is now easily done. And I can customize. I do my stain and glaze. I am not doing cutbacks. This is something that Eddie does, my lab does. I want to be very clear about that. I don't choose to do cutbacks myself. I'm not that good. This is what Eddie does. But now I'm ready to bond those restoration. I am still following and being true to my digital workflow. I'm being true to my same-day dentistry that patients want. And patients, more and more are going to want that. They don't want to come into our office multiple times, even though, we're still doing the same things, but even more so. It's just they want to limit those interactions. Now, the question is, what is a big case for you? A lot of the people on this webinar are young dentists and dentists that are about to graduate. So a big case for you might be 2 anterior crowns. It might be 4 crowns. It might be 8. It might be 28 like me. That's a big case, but there are other big cases. It might be doing bridges. It might be doing implants. It might be opening a vertical dimension. Any of the above can be. So a big case is whatever it is to you. It could be a combination of all of these things. So what do you do? Well, here's what I recommend. Don't be intimidated by these big cases, okay? This is not you. What you should do, and what patients want to see, is that you are confident. And how can you be confident? Well, you can be confident when you are prepared, you've done the work leading up to it, and you have the support you need. The support you need is from the technology we have and from the digital lab, somebody like Eddie Corrales. Now, like I said earlier on, take every opportunity you have to learn, whether it's working side by side with a guy like Eddie Corrales, whether it's learning from these great speakers. We've had incredible speakers this week. We have a number of other great speakers coming up, and I really want to thank Sham for setting this up. I want to thank all the speakers before me and the ones that are going to be on after me. I'm excited to see all these speakers. So make sure you register over the next few weeks for these amazing webinars. And with that, that concludes our presentation. So thank you for joining in. And if there's any questions, Sham, you can throw them out there to us, and we'll be ready to answer them.
Sweet, guys.
Sorry, Mark. It's Mark that's hosting here.
Oh, God. Sorry. So we do have a couple of questions on. Sham can jump in too from the forum, both for Eddie and Jeff. So let me just go through at the beginning. Let me start. Give me a second, guys. There's
no problem. What we'll do too is that we'll have Azim come in and just give us some housekeeping items before we go ahead and ask the questions.
Sure. Perfect.
All right, guys. Yeah, great presentation. Amazing. Some great feedback from everybody just in the chat. So, guys, thank you so much, Dr. Jeff and Eddie, for being a part of this. Amazing presentation. So just a few housekeeping items. Just make sure that you do type your name and your email address into the group chat. This is for CE verification purposes. The video for today's presentation is going to be uploaded to the Dentistry Academy YouTube page. So just make sure you subscribe to that. And then make sure that you follow the Dentistry Academy on Instagram and LinkedIn. You'll get all the latest information and updates in regards to the upcoming webinars that Jeff was speaking about. If you do have questions, feel free to type those in, and Mark's going to address those to our guest speakers. And then tomorrow, of course, we're going to have Dr. Gossiu. He's already done a really nice webinar for us in the past. He'll be doing another one tomorrow, topic being provisionalization. And I know Jeff touched base on that today, really getting predictable results for aesthetic and complex cases. So that lecture is going to begin tomorrow at 12, not 11 like we did start today. And the password is all capital letters, track 20. So again, just make sure that you're aware of that and that you register for that in advance. Mark, you want to go for some questions here?
Sweet. We got a couple of technical questions. So either Jeff, because he has the Vita oven in-house, and also Eddie Corrales, who has the lab oven. These are kind of techie questions. And the question is, what kind of ceramic are you layering on the cutback Suprinity, if you do a cutback? So this is more for Eddie. And you can maybe touch base on what a CTV is, just so the younger dentists kind of know what that is, because material science is kind of boring for us.
Go ahead, Eddie.
Sure is. Well, the portion that we layer on that is called VM11. It's by Vita. It goes with the coefficient of expansion of Suprinity. It has probably about 20 different shades of translucency and also dentin. And we can use really any oven, the Vita oven or the Ivoclar oven, any oven that is for ceramics is what we use.
Perfect. And can you fire that ceramic also in the clinical oven, Jeff?
Well, I don't, as I said, I don't do any cutbacks.
I know, but
yeah.
Is it possible to fire in the clinical oven if the doctor?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's what Eddie did he didn't bring any of his equipment. It was all done on my equipment when he was here.
Cool. So just a heads up, guys, if you guys want more information about the Vita product, Denise is your contact. You just message Hisham in the chat, and he'll fire off Denise's contact from Vita North America, Vita Canada for you guys. Anything about Suprinity, technical aspects, you guys can get that online. Another question we have here is, do you prescribe a night guard for all your aesthetic cases? Like in the case where you showed with full mouth, there were some veneers that were not in contact. Is it just a protocol you prefer?
I do. If I'm and it's very easy to justify it to your patient. I say, you know what, you're spending big money. I want you to be happy. I want this to last a long time. I want to be happy. This is my name on the line here too. So even if they said to me, Jeff, I don't want to pay for a night guard, I'm gonna foot the bill for a night guard. It's cheaper for me to pay for a night guard than to have a failure, something debond, because then I'm going to do it for free anyway, because I stand by what I do. And so it just makes more sense for me to make them a night guard. And they get it. If they're spending that kind of money on a rehab where they're doing, 8, 10, 28 crowns, they have no problem spending another $400 for a night guard.
Cool. That's cool. And we also have another question here. This is for both Eddie and Jeff. I know on social media, a lot of people show gingival surgical guides. You're talking about gingival reduction. You have really good hands, Jeff. Some of the younger dentists in the audience maybe are a little shaky or don't have enough experience. Has Eddie ever done a gingival, based on your smile design, a gingival guide so that the doctor can use it for doing gingival reductions for more aesthetic cases that have a gummy smile? Maybe you can touch upon that a little bit.
In terms of doing like a 3D printed guide,
yeah,
I've seen those too, Mark, and they look incredible, and I think they have. I think they're pretty awesome. I've never used one. I as you said, I just use my hands.
Electrosurge.
But electrosurge. But I'll do my perio surgery too, and crown lengthening and so on. I did get lucky there for sure that he had lots of attached gingiva. Which I could respect, and if that wasn't the case, then I'd be in trouble. But Eddie, why don't you? I don't know if you've ever printed, Mark, whether you have too, because you're the print master. Whether you printed any gingival guide reduction guides?
Yes, we do a lot of that in the laboratory when we do our diagnostic wax-ups, and we notice through our pictures that we need gingivectomies done on some of these areas. We go ahead and we wax our restorations digitally. We print the model, and then we weigh stock down of that model, and we cut right around the gingiva, right where we want the surgery to happen or the laser to happen. We send that to our doctor, to our dentist. He applies that over the unprepped teeth, and that will give them the right area where we want the electrosurgery, or if we want the laser to go to do the surgery. We also do this in a two-dimensional world, which is through photography. We raise the gum with a liquify tool on Photoshop, and we go ahead and raise the gum line. We do communicate that with the doctor if it's 1 millimeter, 2 millimeters, to see if it is doable, if we need to do a different type of surgery ahead of the work. So we need to make sure that the gingiva, allows us to do 2 millimeters or 1 millimeter. But yeah, that is a piece of communication that's very important to give our dentists.
Just to fill in to go on top of that, I've also done gingival guides for some of my doctors when I worked at the lab, and kind of a cool tool, merging all of our concepts together, both mock-ups and digital printing. I actually virtually seat my wax up like Eddie does, but I also use that and I make a gingival guide based on the seated, virtually seated restoration. So if you have a CEREC lab like Eddie and Jeff, then it's very easy to communicate this technology, you know. So that's why we discuss like all comprehensive communication. It's very important.
Yeah. And you know what? I'm doing a talk next Friday for Dentsply Sirona, where I'm talking more about the main part of the talk is how I use a 3D printer within my lab and the advantages, not only for what Eddie and I do, but in terms of ortho, in terms of surgical guides. I really should add that probably to my lecture, Mark, in terms of gingival guides. That's something that I haven't done, but I think, you know, it's a great feature and things that we can do with our 3D printer. So if you're interested, tune into that one. I know that it probably overlaps a little bit of our Dentistry Academy, but I already agreed to do this with Dentsply Sirona a while ago. So next Friday.
We got another question, which is the lovely person asks, do you spot etch or do you have an etching protocol when you do the mock-up transfer if you're leaving it longer than, you know, for full mouth? So I know some clinicians like to spot etch and then do a transfer so it can stay on longer, and some don't. So can you just touch on your protocol?
Yeah, in this case, because I removed those crowns and because I had 14 teeth to grab a hold of, I did 0 etching. And you know, I didn't want it to bond too strongly. If I'm doing a set of veneers, absolutely, I will spot etch, because you need that little bit of extra bond there, so they're not going to fall off. But I wasn't worried at all. I was actually quite surprised how well those temporaries held up. I mean, and he looked at them when we were done with them, and he's like, "Okay, why do I need to go any further? This looks great." And truly, they did. You know, it looked pretty fantastic. So there's always that risk, you know. Eddie, you made too good of a wax up, too good of a digital model.
And then we got one other question. I'm just looking at the chat here. So when you were seating the full mouth restoration, did you do cross arch? Did you do one at a time, or did, like, for younger dentists that are a little bit more comfortable, would you suggest like a seating jig? Just, you know, you have a little bit more experience than most, so maybe touch on that, how you stack the restorations for cementation at the end.
You know, I started with the posterior because that was the order that we did things in. So we did the posterior 4 first. And when you're doing 2 crowns in the posterior, it was actually pretty easy because you're doing, you know, I'm doing the 6 and the 7. So there's always that movement within the 7. The challenge, as you will learn as you move forwards, is always when you get to that very last one. Guaranteed, when you get to that last one, it's always, no matter how perfect things are, it tends to be a little bit tight. Now, I was fortunate. I had Eddie right by my side. I remember when we got to that last anterior, Eddie, I tried it in and I just said, it's just a little bit tighter. But Eddie was standing over my shoulder and just zip, zip, boom, and it sat in perfectly. And you saw from that one video, I did 6 at a time. I seated all 6 maxillary anteriors at a time. The reason I do that is for a number of different reasons. You have to be quick enough to do it. Yes, it comes with experience. And at the beginning, I didn't do that right off the bat. But the concern I have is if you're doing one at a time, well, you seat one, you're going to get that extrusion of your bond. And then you potentially have that bond to the other teeth. Now you're picking that off, and now the next crown does not seat. You know, so you get into that. So it's, you know, it's a double-edged sword. Yes, you have to be efficient when you're doing multiple ones at a time, but there's some advantage when you're seating one after the other. The bond is still soft and you can push through that. So I tend to do multiple at a time, but I didn't always do that. I would do, early on, I would do 2 at a time without a doubt. But as I've gotten more experienced and I've been doing this a long time, I will do, you know, up to probably 6 at a time. I hope that answers your question. You know, it's all a comfort zone, and don't try and bite off more than you can chew. And as I said at the end, you know, what is a big case to you may not be a big case to somebody else, or vice versa. A big case can be 2 anterior crowns, you know, and you have a very demanding patient like that young girl that Eddie showed. I mean, you know, to do 2 on that, that can be demanding. One single anterior crown or veneer can be a very daunting, and one of the most daunting tasks to do. In other lectures, I talk about how I do a lot of single anteriors, and I do that because it is conservative dentistry. And I feel that it's important that we as dentists put that onus on ourselves. A lot of restorative dentists and gurus that are out there, they say, well, I'll never do one. It just doesn't make sense. Do 2, do 4, do 6. Well, that's great. And they say, well, you make more money and it's easier. I agree with both of those facts, but is it the right thing to do? Is it the ethical, right kind of dentistry to do? And that's where I have an issue. I'm going to challenge myself doing the 1. Now, I like to give myself an out. I'll say to a patient, let's try 1 and see how it works. If I can get the 1 to match perfectly, fantastic, you're done, you save a bunch of money. If I can't, well, then maybe we'll do another. And if you do that, then the patient understands that. Invariably, I would say every time they're happy with 1. Cool. Again, that was a little long-winded, but hopefully that answers your question.
And then I got a question from one that I saw my lecture, and it says, is there an advantage between additive and subtractive technology? It's very different. So there's a limitation that a mill has. So burr has a limitation. So like Jeff Sumner was saying, you do have to know how to prep for the manufacturing process. So many CEREC doctors are very good at prepping because they understand the limitations of their mill. And especially when you work with a really awesome technician like Eddie, he also understands the limitation of what a restoration can do. And that dual teamwork allows the restoration to be very successful. So I think, it depends. For example, a mill can't really mill really deep undercuts, but a printer can. So when you try in, for example, a printed crown or printed veneer, it can snap into those undercuts no problem because it can print. It doesn't have that limitation. But when you convert that into a milled restoration, it no longer can mill that kind of undercut. So you have to take that into account. So knowing what the manufacturing process, like I said in the lecture, is very important to your design, both for the clinical side and the laboratory side, to answer your question.
I would agree, and that really addresses it well, Mark. I've learned over the 10 or 11 years that I've been doing CEREC dentistry, and like we talked about with the mill, you're limited by the size of the burr that's cutting into that. And there's a thing called overmilling. And when you look at the internal aspect of that crown and you see circles and you see all these spots, that means your prep is not smooth enough. So what I've learned over time is I really take pride on making those preps, as you saw. And again, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back here, but I want to create the best dentistry possible. So I make my preps as smooth can be. And that way I don't get the overmilling, and you're getting a better bond. So not only do I prep with my green diamond to start with, which is my course, then every time I go to my red stripe diamond. Now I take it even further. I will use my composite polishing burrs, my protocol that I use to polish restorations, to polish my prep to make it that smooth. And that's how you get a very well adapted restoration. But with printing, yes, you can deal with the undercuts, but really we don't want any undercuts. So, force yourself, and CEREC dentistry, CAD/CAM dentistry, forces us to be better dentists without a doubt. We are forced because we have to evaluate it. Like I said, when you do that big impression, that big scan of 14 preps, not only I'm not just looking at the margins, any pulls, anything's going on with that, I'm actually assessing my preparations too. And if I don't like it, it's very easy for me to go back and change those. But if I have a polyvinyl and I got all my margins and all my everything that I needed with no pulls and no blood, I'm not changing anything. I'll say, make it work, Eddie. But I just don't do that.
I think that's it for questions, Hisham, on our side here, and I'll pass it off to Azim and you for the wrap up there.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you so much. From the bottom of my heart, I'd like to thank our hosts for the day. I think Mark, Chen, and Azim went above and beyond on today's talk. So thank you guys so much. And Mark, that was the biggest magic trick that you've pulled for us today, was that quick presentation when we needed it the most. So thanks for putting that together. And as I said, it was very informative. I would like to thank our speakers today, Jeff Sumner and Eddie Corrales. As always, you guys are a wealth of knowledge, and thank you guys for that, and definitely always pushing the envelopes and climbing to new heights. So thanks for putting that together. And I'd like to thank Dr. Pio Modi, who apologized from the bottom of his heart. Just to kind of give you guys an idea, as soon as we're done here, we're going to jump on recording his presentation and placing it on our Dentistry Academy YouTube channel. So once again, thank you everybody for joining. Azim, Mark, Eddie, and Jeff, thank you guys. And we look forward to seeing everybody tomorrow at noon to see the one and only Gafsu once again present to us. So have a great day, guys, and make sure to register for all future talks at dtacademy.ca.
Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
Take care. Bye.